Let's talk about Ganyu. Starting off with the normal attack, because that is actually what we have to take into consideration for Ganyu. Ganyu's normal attack is different to most characters that use a bow, but similar to Yoimiya, where there's a second level of the charge attack. As per normal, there's charge level 1, which just converts the arrow into cryo damage, but here it says charge level 2 fires off a frost flake arrow that deals cryo damage, and the frost flake arrow blooms after hitting its target, dealing AoE cryo damage. And this is the main source of damage that you're going to be using Ganyu for if you're using her as her intended purpose of a main DPS. But obviously, it's going to be the burst if you're using her as something else, but we'll get into that a bit later. And this is a very, very effective way to deal damage. Her skill, on the other hand, works really well with the fact that she is a charge attack kind of bow character, and she dashes backwards, dealing AoE cryo damage and leaving down an Ice Lotus flower. This Ice Lotus continuously taunts surrounding opponents, attracting them to attack it, so essentially just like a taunt, Baron Bunny, Arataki's bull thing, same concept. Its HP is based on Ganyu's HP, and when its duration ends or it explodes, it deals AoE cry damage. But the main thing you want to use this for is the taunt factor. This is going to make using Ganyu a lot easier and a lot more efficient. And then finally, her burst, which is the ability that you're going to be using if you're using her as a cryo applicator / cryo support, and she essentially just places down a massive area of effect that rains down continuous ice shards, striking opponents with AoE cryo damage. The reason obviously you want to use this for support is because it's cryo application. You're going to want fast, high cryo application, and this will do it for you. This is a good one just as also kind of a bit of a maintain DPS or sustain DPS, because it will just be constantly going off for a set duration of time. And at level 8, that duration is 15 seconds. So 15 seconds of constant uptime, and also a 15-second cooldown, so that is 100% uptime as well. So it's a very good thing for support as well as sub DPS / continuous DPS. Now talking about talent priority, for main DPS it's going to be the auto attack. You want to get that charge level 2 hit being super strong, so main DPS is the auto attack, whilst for the support / cryo applicator / sub DPS, it's going to be Celestial Shower, the elemental burst. This is the main one that you want for that role specifically of being a support character because of the high cryo application, constant cryo application, and almost 100% uptime on high cryo application. And then the skill is kind of just like a nice benefit of having a taunt very frequently, every 10 seconds. Now onto the passives. Ganyu's got one of the strongest passives in the game in my opinion. After firing a Frost Flake arrow, the crit rate of subsequent Frost Flake arrows and their resulting bloom effects is increased by 20%. This essentially is telling you that you don't need a 60% crit rate. You can go for like 40 and then 60 will be on every other second shot. Or you could even go for like 60 and then you'll always have 80. So this really makes the character a lot easier to play because they're just getting 20% crit rate for their main damage dealer just through a passive talent, which is kind of crazy. And then second passive, it's another crazily good one, but Celestial Shower, the elemental burst, grants a 20% cryo damage bonus to active party members in the AoE, which is crazy. So this is mainly going to be used if your Ganyu is a main DPS, but also could be used if you want to use maybe Ayaka as a main DPS. You just chuck down Ganyu's AoE field, you switch to Ayaka, and Ayaka is also having a 20% cryo damage bonus, which is absolutely crazy. Both passive 1 and passive 2 for Ganyu are ridiculously good. Definitely ascend her, get these unlocked, and you'll get instant value out of her. Now, there is a reason why Ganyu is regarded as the best character in the game, or the strongest DPS in the game, and that, I believe, stems from the constellations. C1, charge level 2 Frost Flake arrows and the Frost Flake arrow blooms decrease cryo res on opponents by 15% for 6 seconds upon hit. Really amazing if you can chain your shots correctly and accurately. Just characters take 15% increased damage overall, as well as the hits regenerate 2 energy per charge shot, so it doesn't matter which part of it hits, it's just as long as the arrow hits, you'll gain 2 energy per arrow, which is an amazing constellation. Let's be honest here, 15% cryo res is, or shred rather, is beyond amazing. C2 may not sound amazing, but kind of is. Trail of Kill and her elemental skill gains an additional charge, essentially another taunt, making it easier to use Ganyu in the grand scheme of things. Enemies won't attack you. You just have a lot more free space to move around and do what Ganyu does, and that's shoot enemies. C4 is kind of crazy in my opinion. I personally didn't know about this until just now. But opponents standing within the AoE of her elemental burst take increased damage. This effect strengthens over time. Increased damage taken begins at 5% and increases by 5% every 3 seconds up to a maximum of 25% increased damage taken, the effect lingers for 3 seconds after they leave the AoE. This is absolutely crazy. This is essentially an elemental shred just to the character or the enemy as a whole. They don't need to have a certain elemental resistance. They just take 25% increased damage, which is absolutely, absolutely crazy. And then onto C6 though, using Trail of Killin causes the next Frostflake arrow to shot within 30 seconds to not require charging. Now this may not sound as crazy as C4 because there's no percentage increase, but the very high appeal thing of this is that the one thing holding Ganyu back from being an absolute monster truck of an AoE massive damage dealer is the time it takes to charge her arrows. Well, you get C6, you get essentially 2 free charged arrow shots instantly upon your desire. 3 if you do a 1 pre-charge, which is absolutely crazy when you take into consideration that Ganyu can start blasting like 40k hits, 30k hits from this charge shot. So this is a really, really crazy C6 if used properly, but obviously it isn't a percentage increase, so you have to do a bit of skill play here to get a lot of value out of this one. Now, onto the weapons. There are 2 weapons that are her best in slot. One is 5-star, one is 4-star, and for the 5-star, it's the Amos bow. It's her signature weapon. This is going to be her best weapon overall. It kind of just works to her whole kit. Increases normal and charge attack damage, mainly the charge attack. And the further you fire the arrow from the charge, the more it deals damage. So essentially, the Amos bow is the strongest, but a very close contender, and by close contender I mean just the next best thing, is the Prototype Crescent, I believe it's called, the craftable bow. It's up on the screen right now. This is going to be her next best weapon because it essentially is the Amos bow, but just slightly weaker because it doesn't have that second part of the ability. But for the most part, it is still the next best bow. Maybe some of the other 5-star weapons are maybe better. Obviously, you could go with the Thundering Pulse, I believe it's called, or maybe the Polar Star. Maybe you could go with those. I'm not exactly sure. But these are the ones that I would recommend. If you have the Amos bow, use it on Ganyu, or if you have the Prototype Crescent, use it on Ganyu. It gets you to feel the playstyle a bit more, and you can understand the character a bit better because you're using the correct weapon in terms of their kit. But if you don't have any of those, which is kind of weird if you don't have the Prototype Crescent at this point, it's kind of a old weapon. But if you don't have any of those weapons, some of these weapons from the 4-star category can also work for you. They are just generally good weapons for general gameplay. Now, in terms of artifacts, there are maybe a few different ones that you can potentially take a look at, but in the test run, they give you 4 set Blizzard Strayer, which is really good. Using this set right here lets you just take on a lot more crit damage because you have 40% crit rate from the 4 set. And generally speaking, this will be a good place to start, or at least 2 set Blizzard Strayer will be a great place to start. Now, I don't think there's necessarily a best in slot artifact for her, mainly because there's a few different ones that people use all around. They use Blizzard Strayer for consistency. People use Wanderer's Trope 4 set for just massive singular hits, reactions. There are a fair few different sets that people use. Maybe even 4 set Shimenawas could work well if you really wanted it to, especially if you have a certain constellation that recharges energy per charge shot. But for now, in my honest opinion, there's 2 sets that I would recommend you use for Ganyu, which is either 4 set Blizzard Strayer or 4 set Wanderer's Trope. 4 set Blizzard Strayer will be a bit more of your conventional DPS where you're just shooting enemies or trying to freeze them with a different composition, but generally just shooting enemies, whilst the 4 set Wanderer's Trope will be a bit more of trying to get reactions off because of that elemental mastery increase. But still, both are going to be generally good. I don't know exactly which one is better because there's a lot of talk about both of them being used. So now, as we play this little test run, I'm going to just talk about what you're going to expect when playing Ganyu. And to summarize it up in pretty much a few words is that you're going to expect a very easy time. The character isn't difficult as long as you don't try to make her difficult in terms of a user standard. You can just shoot the ground to get a lot of value out of her Frostflake Bloom. As you can see, it has a massive radius in regards to the arrow location. And that is essentially it. In this situation, you can see that I don't actually have to use the skill for the taunt. But even just to look at the taunt, you can just plop it down and the enemies will not pay attention to you essentially. It's quite simple, quite straightforward. It explodes, deals a bunch of damage, and if you're, actually playing the game in that time, you would have killed the enemies whilst they were taunted. So, very easy character, I'm gonna be honest, not a difficult one to play or use. as well as you're getting a lot of value out of her. So if you really like the character and you really want a lot of value out of something, by all means, boys, grab this one. It's an absolute monstrous unit. And that's going to wrap up this Ganyu preview. There may have been a few things I missed, like stat priority, but it's not that difficult to figure out her stat priority as she is just a main DPS character. But hope you guys did enjoy this Ganyu preview. If you did, like the video, as well as consider subscribing to the channel. We're growing pretty well, and I'm really happy about it. So if you want to support the channel, subscribe down below. As well, comment down below in the comment section what you guys think of Ganyu. Do you think she's a great character? What do you think of her build? Do you think she could be made better, or do you think she's too strong? Till the next video, guys, have a safe day, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.